Welcome back to TarHeelIllustrated.com. I'm THL staff writer Brandon P. Joining me today from Bobby Dodd Stadium in Atlanta, Georgia, is our very own publisher, Mr. Andrew Jones. And AJ, we just watched North Carolina lose a second consecutive game of the 23 season. Third time in a row to Georgia Tech. It's just not good. And the defense, and we just jump straight into this, Andrew. The defense was not very good. They were good for 2 quarters, bad for 2 quarters, and that's the first thing we're going to talk about. It's just the topsy-turvy defense between the first and the third quarter and the second and fourth quarter. Can I just get your thoughts on that?
The defense was putrid in the second quarter and putrid in the third and the fourth quarter. I asked Mac after the game, I said, did it feel a little bit like App State? Thought for a second and said, yeah, it did. And I think it's more disappointing than App State because that was the beginning of Chiswick part 2, and it showed him that, hey, things have changed so much in the game, got to tweak some stuff. And it's also more disappointing than that and more surprising because 2 weeks ago, Jacob and I stood on the field at Kenan Stadium after the win over Miami, believing that the program really was different and the team really was different. And the third quarter that night against Miami, they bowed up, and that was the most physical defense I've seen North Carolina play since the Butch Davis era. And then to turn around and get run over by a bad offense last week, and just as another writer said to me, he said, well, if it wasn't like App State, it was like Baylor in the bowl game. Yeah. Think about it. In the fourth quarter, Tech had consecutive runs of 70 and 52 yards. And on that 52-yard situation, they also tacked on a 10 and a 14 after that. It was terrible. There's no other way. Look at Mac's video. Just look at him. Look at his hair. Look at his face. Look at his demeanor. No answers. I heard that he really lit into the defense after the game, really lit into him in a way that some people say he hadn't lit into anybody about anything since he came back. And for good reason. That was an atrocious performance. In the second quarter and fourth quarters combined, North Carolina allowed 46 points, 537 yards, and 23 first downs. That's East Carolina 2014 bad. That's App State last year bad. That's John Bunning bad. That's Larry Fedora bad. I think it's worse because of the expectations, because of the message that we're getting from the program, and what some of us in the media have been putting out. I mean, we're guilty of it too, because I really thought this was different. I thought that this team was just different. I thought the edge was different, and the edge wasn't there. I asked Mac if it kind of really first time felt like it snowballed. He said, well, it did some last week, and I guess I should have qualified last week because there were times it felt like the snowball was happening defensively last week, but it was on fire tonight. I mean, there wasn't anything Carolina could do. I think Haynes King was 20 for 24 in the first time. I mean, they actually moved the ball a little bit in the first quarter. I think if we go back and look, and I haven't had time to check yet, it's 1:07 in the morning, and I'll be up for a long time before I drive home. But I believe the only possession Georgia Tech didn't get at least one first down was the one right after the block punt when they threw the interception.
Yeah.
That's I believe crappy defense. I asked Cedric about it. A couple of us asked Cedric a lot about it. I think he's stunned, but he didn't say he was stunned. A little bit surprised. He said that they were caught off guard by the speed, the pace, the tempo that Georgia Tech went with. And I saw early, even in the first quarter, when they were able to get out the field with a couple of fourth down stops, they still didn't look great in pre-snap. And in the second quarter, they were horrible in pre-snap, and I tweeted that out a couple of times. I said, I said, you guys said, from my vantage point, you look confused. And he said, we were. Now, it sounded like they didn't prepare a ton for the tempo. They were surprised by the tempo and didn't adjust to the tempo. And in the third quarter, it really wasn't like they played great defense. They had the ball for most of the third quarter. They ran a ton. They were following the script that they didn't follow, that they didn't employ last week in the fourth quarter against Virginia. They did that in the third quarter, took the lead. And but man, the defense was so bad, Brandon. I mean, I've seen so many bad defense. I've seen so many bad defenses at a lot of schools that I've covered, certainly at this one. But given the narrative 9 days ago.
Yeah.
And what we've seen since then, this is about as surprised as I've been over a consecutive game performance by North Carolina, maybe in the entire time I've been covering the school. We'll get into the what does this mean here in a bit, and I think that's part of it. But they allowed a 173-yard receiver. They allowed a 150-something yard rusher. I think Georgia Tech, I don't have the stats in front of me, 300-something yards rushing, 600-something yards offense, 29 first downs, I believe it was. Man, this was a real crap performance by the defense, and it's why they lost.
Yeah. To be clear, defense gave up 635 total yards. But on the flip side of that, you can make an argument that Carolina's offense was almost just as good. Last week, the offense got a lot of blame for the loss against Virginia because, once they got that 10-point lead, they stopped going to Amarian Hampton and they stopped going to Tez Walker. And the offense just kind of fell apart last week. But this week, they wanted to establish the run. They did that, getting Amarian Hampton 29 carries for 153 yards. So they got the run established. They scored 42 points. They had 577 total yards. And when you have those type of numbers, AJ, you need to come out with a win in that game.
Sure. Yeah, and very quickly, got an update from UNC about 40 minutes ago on Tez Walker. He was taken to a local hospital for evaluation. Nothing else. No one was going to speculate, but he'll be here overnight. Team's flying home. So we'll see. That's tough. He didn't see that situation happen. The guy hit. He just didn't know he was there. The offense was really good for the most part. Drake missed a couple more. He missed some touchdowns. They scored on one of those drives. They didn't score on the other one when he missed Tez wide open. Amarian, 3 straight games, 100+ yards. He's averaged 6.4 yards and 72 carries in the last 3 games. So that's a weapon. He's answered the question we had earlier in the year about can he do it against Power Fives. He's doing it against Power Fives. I thought Drake was mostly pretty good. He wasn't helped by a drop by Nesbitt and then a 31-yard pass to Nesbitt that ended up affecting a drive. There was a hold called on Diego Pounds. It didn't really look like that was a hold. That stuff happens. Great offense is supposed to make up for that. And when you score 42 points, you're supposed to win. So no real complaints about the offense. We could pick at some stuff because they needed to do some things at a time of the game where, quite frankly, if the defense would have lived up to its end of the deal, the offense wouldn't have had to do those things. They wouldn't have needed Drake to throw strikes to Tez Walker with a couple minutes left in the game, 36-yard play in which he ends up getting hurt on. They wouldn't have needed that if the defense would have just done partly done his job, but the defense was horrible. So he kind of wasted a pretty good effort by the offense. Drake went over 300 yards. I thought he made some gutsy runs tonight. And he made runs where he didn't go down as quickly as he had before. He knew that they needed to move those chains. He knew that they needed to keep the defense off the field. He knew it.
Yeah.
You could just tell by the way he played. He didn't say it afterward, but you could tell by the way he played. So the offense did its part. They had some penalties, some bad ones, but they lost this game because of the defense, and they had some special teams issues too, but the block punt didn't hurt them. But you got to get that fixed. That's 3 block punts in 8 games. Got to get that fixed. That's just inexcusable. And Burnett, who had been fantastic this year, finally missed a field goal tonight. It was going to come at some point. It came in a bad time. They could have used that because I think they may have handled that drive where Tez got hurt maybe a little differently. And they may have used a little more clock, maybe try to get down there, at least get a field goal, because it would have been 46-45 at that time. So it is what it is, Brandon. That's what Cedric Gray said He said 3 times. It is what it is.
Yeah, I guess it is what it is. So, AJ, that's 2 consecutive losses. North Carolina is now 6-2 overall in the season, 3-2 in the ACC. I imagine the energy in the football center is not as high as it was at the beginning of the year. So what does this mean overall for UNC football going forward?
I guess the Campbell game is a good thing then, because they shouldn't have it if they don't win next. Campbell got routed by Richmond today. So if the Tar Heels don't win that one, then they'll dig up Kenan Stadium and move it elsewhere, I guess. Who knows? They'll win next week. They'll get a feel-good win next week. They need it right now. So I guess the timing of this, they should never play these games, but the timing of it comes at a really good time. They need it.
Yeah.
And then they have 3 very important games, 2 against their biggest rivals and 1 against a team that who knows what Clemson's going to be when they go down there, but they're all losable games. And there are 3 teams that are more physical than North Carolina. Once again, for all the physicality and the talk about soft and changing that narrative, man, that narrative is back. The last 2 weeks has it back. So they've got to fix that. And they can do it because they have been a more physical team than opponents earlier this year. So now they have to fix it. They have to go back to what they were before they took the field against Virginia. Really, before they showed up at the Keenum Football Center the day after Miami, when they showed up to practice. I think that everything started then. They talk about being content and 9-1, and they kind of took their foot off the pedal a little bit. Some of the people in the program did that, and they had the 17-0 lead against Georgia Tech and never really recovered. And I know Mac likes to say, look, they had a chance to win some of those games. They did. I think they should have been in better position than lose because you're missing a field goal in overtime against NC State. Shouldn't have had to be in that situation. They got pounded by Clemson. I know they did some positive things at line of scrimmage, still got pounded. Scoreboard says it. Cade Klubnik's best game, I think, maybe, right? Against a decent team.
Yeah.
That tells you something.
Yeah.
Okay, they competed against Oregon, but this is shades of a lot of stuff that's gone wrong in the last decade. One of the writers, we were talking on the elevator coming back up after the press conference, and he said Baylor. I'm saying App State, but he also brought up 2016 when they're 7-1, and they go to Duke and lose on a Thursday night when they had a 2-touchdown lead a couple times that night. Mitch throws an interception at the end of the game, and they didn't recover, and that was sort of the beginning of the end for Larry Fedora. They're doing this same thing they did a year ago again. And this is with a team that we were told had much better leadership, much better chemistry. They're older, they're smarter, they adjust well. These are all things I have talked about and I have written about. I've reported it as fact because up to that time, it appeared to be fact. But they've lost those things. All that's gone. They're still 6-2. They can still have a great year, especially for UNC standards. They could pick themselves up and win some important games down the road that people will be happy about. But man, that cliff that they fell over last week, they were trying to get up the cliff today, and you get about halfway up and then you slip and fall and go back down to the bottom. And that second fall hurts worse than the first fall because you're already injured. You're already banged up. Now you got a bunch of broken bones. So Mac has to patch this thing together. And I asked him after the game, I said, how do you patch this thing together before you steer him in that direction? Because his job now isn't just, okay, guys, let's just kick everyone's derriere and, make them run sprints until they puke and get them on the right track. It's when you got 120 guys on the roster and 85 on scholarship, it's a lot different than that. You can't do that to that group. He has to patch this thing together while also figuring out what the hell went wrong. Well, also having a mano-a-mano with Gene Chizik, the same kind of one he did last year after the Notre Dame game, say, dude, what the hell gives? What's up? What's up with this? He's got to look around that entire room, every office in that building. What the hell? He's also got to look in the mirror. He's got to find out what he can do different. I will say this much. People like to get on Maxim Hauser being a CEO. And I'm leaning against the railing here, so pardon me if I look kind of strange. But I Brandon used to next to me at games. I had my binoculars. There were a lot of times on the sideline or when the team came on the field, Mac was the one talking back. Yeah, he was the one talking. And he was talking to all different assistant coaches. He was over there talking to Larry Porter. Why are we getting another pump block? Why is the Shield team screwing up again? I mean, good gracious. I've told you before about my thing about offensive line on the Shield team. They're not quick enough. So that's just my take. But they got a lot to fix now, and psychologically is probably their biggest thing. They're so fortunate they got the Campbell Fighting Camels coming in this week because that will be tonic for a week. And then Duke comes in, and Duke's getting banged up, and they're probably dealing with some of the similar questions themselves too right now. So I can't spin this one, man.
Yeah.
There's no point. Ryan, this is a bad look. Last week was a bad look. Today was a bad look. Georgia Tech's not a terrible team, but I will say this about the defense as they now slide back down the ratings. They've played 3 good quarterbacks this year, and all 3 have done really, really well against them. The rest of the teams they played, the quarterbacks stunk.
Yeah.
So maybe we're finding out who this team really is, and we all missed the boat on that one big time. Who knows? We'll see. And they got 4 more. They got 4 more games, and I guess after NC State, we'll truly know who they are.
Yeah. And as Cedric Gray said multiple times tonight, it is what it is. Well, AJ, North Carolina football has
it is what it is, but it is a big glob of ugliness, dude.
Yeah.
And they're going to have to carry that ugliness back to Chapel Hill and figure out how to clean that stuff up.
Yeah. Oh yeah, for sure. North Carolina football, they have a lot of work to do. So do you. So I'm gonna let you get out of here tonight. For TarHeelIllustrated.com, I've been Brandon P. He's been Andrew Jones. Thank you for watching.